Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's show. We have on with us Dan Ellsworth. Dan, how you doing?
Good. How about you?
Doing all right. Thanks for joining us. I got to know you and about you basically just through online interactions. But then I began to look into some of the things that you had written, and I very quickly became a big fan.
Oh, good. Hope
So
it's helpful.
I'm excited to have you on today to talk about one of the articles that you've written. But before we kind of get into that, I want to give a little introduction to you. So kind of to go through your bio. Dan is a consultant and a writer living in Charlottesville, Virginia. Dan graduated with his BA in International Studies from BYU and currently serves on the Mormon Studies Council at the University of Virginia. Dan is also a contributor to the Interpreter Foundation, Public Square Magazine, and other groups dedicated to improving Latter-day Saint understanding of theology and scripture. And then last but certainly not least, you are married and have 2 children.
Yep.
Anything missing from that bio?
Nope.
All
That's
right.
it.
Very cool. Well, to get started, I want to kind of go a little bit into your story, get to know you a little bit before we get into the article. So tell us a little bit about your background with the church.
I grew up in the church. I grew up in Southern California. Church member my whole life. Served a mission in Brazil. And I had some really deep struggles with my faith years ago that kind of led me to I don't know, research things a lot deeper, dig a lot deeper, wrestle a lot deeper than I had been before in my life. And I've emerged from that a happier, more confident Latter-day Saint, happier in my faith than I ever was before, to be honest. And so a lot of my writing on Public Square Magazine is kind of sharing some challenging concepts that can help people to make good, healthy adjustments to their faith.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because my story, I feel like, parallels that so much. I never tell people I had a faith crisis, but I do say I had to do kind of a faith remodeling where I had to kind of grapple with kind of the big adult hard questions of faith. And I've linked that to my own passion for this sort of stuff, because I, like you, came out of it, the other end of it. I'd say mine kind of lasted probably almost 10 years, I would say. And when I came out the other end of it, I've come out way more at peace and kind of much happier than I ever was.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like you had a similar journey with that. But just out of curiosity, what do you think? What advice would you give to someone who's maybe confronting those sorts of, big picture adult type questions?
I would just say prepare to dig deeper than you ever have before. If you don't know how to fast, now's the time to learn. If you don't know how to fast every week until a problem is resolved, now's the time to learn. But there are answers. Some answers require that we actually become a different person than we were. Some of them are, and I say that, I mean, some are tied to our human development, just maturing as a human being.
Yeah.
Some things are hard to understand until we kind of up level just as people in our human development. And so keep that in mind, and be patient and work through things, and you'll be okay. A lot of people confront faith challenges with the assumption that they and their sources know everything there is to know about our faith. They've been to the summit, and you hear a lot of people who go through faith struggles. They rattle off their resume. Oh, I was an elders quorum president. I served in a state presidency, and da da da. And so now, you know, you can see why I'm so justified in feeling this or that. And you can serve in visible church callings and have very, very shallow gospel understanding.
Mm-hmm.
That was, you know, a huge awakening for me. Was I realized, okay, I'm 40 years old, and oh my gosh, there's so little that I know,
Mm-hmm.
even with my resume, if you want to
Yeah.
call it that. Um, and now I would never dream of giving a resume
Yeah.
and saying, "Oh, look at my resume. Aren't I so knowledgeable in our faith?" Whatever. I mean, I think every day I think I just haven't. I've never even really scratched the surface of the depths of this religion. I
Yeah.
mean, it's always so much deeper, so much more vast than I ever imagined, and I'm I love it. That's exciting to me. You know, it's invigorating, to be honest. But
Yeah.
before it was scary. Now
Yeah.
it's not scary to me anymore. After you honestly slay a few dragons and get the hang of it, you're like, okay, you know,
It's
that I see how that works, and I'm gonna be okay whatever happens.
it's funny because as I hear you talk about this, it's you're taking the words out of my mouth. I have the exact same sentiment. It was this journey where I had to go deeper. I always tell people I really had to go down to the foundations of everything,
Yeah,
and build from there. You know, I think one thing that people get mixed up as they sort of explore the church, or they have issues with the church, quote unquote, is that there are so many presuppositions that's built upon.
right.
A presupposition of Jesus Christ, presuppositions of the existence of God. I mean,
Yeah,
if I'm an atheist looking at the story of Joseph Smith, I mean, I totally get why they think it's cuckoo nonsense. But if you all of a sudden believe in God, and you believe that God actually acts in the world, and you believe that Jesus Christ of the Bible, that story is fundamentally, even though maybe not perfectly, true, that then all of a sudden the story of Joseph Smith becomes way more probable than
yeah,
if you're just going from, you know, a materialistic, naturalistic, atheistic sort of lens and
yeah,
looking for the evidence kind of in that way. And so in my mind, I always tell people, you know, if you have an issue with the church, you need to go back a step. Look at your Christianity. If you're having trouble with your Christianity, go back a step. Look at your belief in God. And if you actually strengthen those, if you strengthen the foundations, then the rest of it begins to build, and it becomes, you end up realizing that it's all logically connected, and you know, I remember I use this analogy sometimes. I remember when I was a kid and I saw an algebraic equation and there were letters in there with the numbers, and it just was like, this is absolutely craziness. Like, how could that be? And we might look at really advanced equations, any of us right now. But if you don't understand the arithmetic first and then the basic algebra, and you have to go step by step to have the rest of this stuff make sense. Otherwise, it's just, you don't have the tools necessary to understand this bigger thing. And what you're dealing with is the biggest thing of all.
right. And another of our challenges nowadays is, you know, when we talk about suppositions, uh, there are some suppositions that are really hard to articulate, and maybe the biggest one is worldview. It's kind of a collection of assumptions and suppositions,
Yeah, that
and
form the lens
that's really kind of the core of today's discussion about identity. I mean, these are foundational things that we don't um, we don't articulate very much or
mm-hmm.
very well. And so people can charge into their gospel questioning and their gospel study, and just be constantly clashing with scripture, clashing with church leadership, clashing with the community of believers at church, clashing with parents and family, just clashing because they've adopted a different worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And And identity, questions around identity are a huge part of worldview.
Absolutely. And who would, and as we look at kind of worldview as this lens that we look through things, this kind of the lens through which we see the world, and we'll get more into that as we get into the subject matter. Who are the people that you would say have most sort of influenced the worldview that you currently have?
Gosh, worldview that I currently have. One of them is M. Scott Peck. He was a psychiatrist who wrote a book way back. It was either late 70s or early 80s called The Road Less Traveled.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an excellent book for talking about what is life, what is love, what is how do you navigate life well.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that he says in that are just profound.
Mm-hmm.
And it has affected me. That book in particular has affected me deeply at several points in my life. Peck was kind of a train wreck himself in terms of his personal life, but I think from being a train wreck and also being a psychiatrist, and just being open to deep, kind of realizations about human nature, he had a lot of them, and he wrote them down. He has affected my worldview a lot.
Uh-huh.
I in recent years, gosh, it's hard to pin down exactly one person. I would say some leaders of the church have powerfully affected my worldview. Spencer W. Kimball is one, probably more than anybody.
Why is that? What would you say? What about Spencer W. Kimball has really hit you?
I wrote an entire blog post about stories just from Spencer W. Kimball's life. If you read, he has two biographies. One of them is just called Spencer W. Kimball, and the other one's called Lengthen Your Stride. And the second one, Lengthen Your Stride, it covers the years of that he was president of the church, and just looking at how he worked through issues, how he just a profoundly Christian disciple, like you honestly, it's just jaw-dropping how he balanced love and truth, and kind of walked these lines that we try to walk and don't do so well a lot of the time. He was just a remarkable human being. Studying his life has really powerfully affected me.
Awesome. If there's some background noise, it's because we got some kids in the house right now.
Okay.
So don't mind that. But if our listeners here want to connect with you online or read the stuff that you've written, where would you suggest they go?
I'm on social media, and I'm also at Public Square Magazine, publicsquaremag.org, I think, or either .org or .com. I think it's .org.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this little introduction with me. Now we'll get into the subject matter at hand.
Okay.
If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and hit the subscribe button. Also, if you want more content, including the podcast, go to thoughtful-faith.com. Thanks for watching.